The crystalline halls of the Galactic Council station hummed with tension as Ambassador Sarah Chen walked toward the Judgment Chamber. Her boots echoed against the polished floors that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Today, they would witness humanity's trial. The chamber stretched before her like a vast amphitheater carved from living starlight. Representatives from 47 species sat in floating observation pods, their forms ranging from the ethereal luminary to the massive rock-like Krathen. At the center, the Council of Five presided from their elevated platform, each member representing one of the galaxy's most ancient and powerful civilizations. Sarah took her place at the defendant's podium, her chin raised despite the weight of what was about to unfold. Behind her sat the small human delegation, military advisors, scientists, and diplomats who had fought for years to keep their species in the galactic community. High Arbiter Zexthol of the Vorthan Empire rose first, his serpentine form coiling as he spoke. His voice carried the authority of 10,000 years of galactic governance. Humanity of Sol 3, you stand accused of violating the sacred accords of galactic peace. Your species has been found guilty of excessive aggression, uncontrolled expansion, and the corruption of lesser civilizations with your violent ideologies. The charges hung in the air like poison. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she remained silent as protocol demanded. Counselor Withara of the Celestial Communion floated forward, her crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. Your wars span millennia. Your history bleeds with conflict. When we granted you membership in our community 50 years ago, we hoped your species would evolve beyond its primitive nature. Instead, you have proven that violence is your core essence. The defense may now speak, announced Arbiter Velthon of the Ethereal Collective, his gas form shimmering with barely contained disgust. Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. Honored Council, humanity acknowledges our turbulent past, but we have proven our capacity for growth. In the 5 decades since joining this community, human colonies have become beacons of trade and cooperation. Our medical advances have saved millions across dozens of worlds. Our agricultural techniques have ended famines on 7 planets. Irrelevant, hissed Zexthul. Your military buildup continues. Your colonial expansion knows no bounds. Reports indicate you maintain standing armies that dwarf those of civilizations twice your age. This is the behavior of conquerors, not contributors. The Luminari representative, speaking through harmonized light patterns that the chamber's translators converted to speech, added their condemnation. Most disturbing are the philosophical contaminations. Worlds that have hosted human populations now speak of concepts like manifest destiny and survival of the fittest. These toxic ideologies threaten the peaceful coexistence we have maintained for millennia. Sarah's hands clenched at her sides. We have brought innovation and determination to every world we've touched. Yes, we maintain defensive capabilities, but only because we've learned that peace requires strength to preserve it. As for our philosophies, we offer choice, not compulsion. Free will is a human gift to the galaxy. The council chamber erupted in discordant sounds. The electronic screeches of outraged artificial intelligences, the harmonic discord of the crystalline chorus, and the deep rumbling of disapproval from the Titan collective. The cacophony spoke to how deeply humanity had disturbed the galactic order. High Arbiter Zexthul raised his staff, and silence fell like a curtain. The Council has heard enough. Humanity's nature is incompatible with galactic civilization. You are a virus in the body of peace, spreading conflict wherever you go. The judgment is unanimous. Sarah felt her heart stop as she waited for the inevitable words. By the authority of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby banished from all civilized space. You have 30 standard days to withdraw all human presence from Council territories. Any human found in galactic space after this period will be considered an enemy combatant and dealt with accordingly. The weight of the sentence crashed down on the human delegation. 50 years of careful diplomacy, centuries of dreaming about humanity's place among the stars, and the hopes of 12 billion humans scattered across 37 worlds, all destroyed in a single moment. Furthermore, continued Counselor Yathara, all trade agreements are terminated immediately. All technological exchanges are revoked. Any species found aiding humanity in violation of this banishment will face severe sanctions. Sarah found her voice despite the crushing despair. You're condemning billions of innocent people for the actions of their ancestors. This is not justice. This is fear. It is necessity, replied Arbiter Velthon coldly. Your species represents chaos in a universe that has finally achieved order. We will not allow you to drag us back into the dark ages of war and suffering. The session ended with ceremonial finality. As the council members departed, Sarah remained standing at the podium, staring at the empty seats where humanity's future had just been decided. The other delegates joined her, their faces reflecting the same mixture of rage and despair. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, the delegation's military advisor, placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. 30 days to evacuate 37 worlds. They're not just banishing us, they're trying to break us. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief xenobiologist, shook her head in disbelief. 50 years of cooperation, and they throw it all away because we make them uncomfortable. They're terrified of what we represent. What do we represent? Asked Sarah, her voice hollow. Change, replied Admiral Rodriguez grimly. Evolution, competition, everything they've spent millennia trying to eliminate from their perfect, stagnant civilization. As they made their way back to the human embassy, Sarah's mind raced with the implications. 12 billion humans lived on council worlds, many of them in their second or third generation. These people had never seen Earth, had built their lives among alien communities, and now faced exile to an uncertain future. The next few days blurred together in a frenzy of emergency planning. Human colonies across the galaxy received the evacuation orders with responses ranging from disbelief to outrage. Some colonies, particularly those in remote sectors, declared their intention to resist. Others began the heartbreaking process of abandoning homes they'd spent decades building. On Kepler 442b, the human agricultural colony that fed 3 neighboring star systems, colonists worked around the clock to harvest what they could before the deadline. On Trappist 1e, human engineers dismantled the fusion reactors they'd built, refusing to leave such advanced technology for the aliens who had betrayed them. But it was the response from Earth itself that truly shocked the galaxy. President Chen Wei's address to the United Nations was broadcast across human space and somehow found its way to alien networks despite communication blackouts. Her words would be remembered as the moment humanity's true nature was finally revealed. Fellow humans, she began, standing before the familiar blue marble that had given birth to their species. Today, we have been cast out from the galactic community for the crime of being ourselves. They fear our strength, our adaptability, our refusal to accept limitations. They call us violent, but we call it determination. They call us aggressive, but we call it ambition. The president's eyes blazed with an intensity that seemed to burn through the broadcast. For 50 years, we have played by their rules, hoping to earn acceptance from civilizations that peaked while our ancestors were still learning to make fire. We have constrained our growth, limited our expansion, and dulled our edge to fit into their vision of peace. No more. Around the galaxy, humans stopped their frantic evacuation efforts to listen to words that would reshape their destiny. They have given us 30 days to leave their space, believing this will break our spirit. They do not understand that exile is not punishment for humanity. It is liberation. We will take our 12 billion people, our dreams, and our determination. and we will build something greater than their stagnant empire ever imagined. The transmission continued for another hour, outlining a plan so audacious that even the humans listening could barely believe it. Project Exodus would not just evacuate human colonies, it would relocate entire populations to star systems beyond the Council's reach, carrying with them every piece of technology, every resource, and every dream they could manage. Let them keep their perfect peace, President Chen concluded. We will take the stars. As the broadcast ended, something fundamental shifted in the human psyche. The despair of banishment transformed into the fire of determination. If the galaxy didn't want humanity as partners, they would learn to respect them as competitors. Admiral Rodriguez, watching the speech from the council station, felt a grim smile cross his face. They have no idea what they've just unleashed. Sarah nodded, her diplomatic training warring with a growing sense of anticipation. For the first time since the trial, she felt hope. 50 years we've been holding back, trying to fit in. Now we can finally show them what humanity is really capable of. The 30-day countdown had begun, and with it, the last chapter of humanity's attempt to be civilized. What would follow would demonstrate why their species had clawed their way up from a hostile world to challenge the very stars themselves. The Council had wanted to banish humanity's chaos from their ordered universe. Instead, they had just set that chaos free to remake the galaxy in humanity's own image. And deep in the planning rooms of Earth's military command, strategists were already drawing up blueprints for war machines the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. 5 years after the Great Exodus, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance, watching as another star system fell under human control. The massive dreadnought, one of hundreds constructed in the industrial complexes of the Outer Rim, represented everything the Galactic Council had feared about humanity, and everything they had been too blind to prevent. Captain, we're receiving surrender signals from the Altarian defense platforms, reported Commander Zhang from the tactical station. Their entire fleet is requesting permission to withdraw to neutral space. Elena nodded, her expression grim with satisfaction. Grant it. Send a message to Admiral Santos. Another system secured without significant casualties. The Altarians were smart enough not to resist. Through the bridge's massive viewport, she could see the remnants of what had once been a thriving alien colony world. The Altarians, a peaceful aquatic species, had been among the many civilizations that chose flight over fight when humanity arrived in their sector. Their evacuation ships were already disappearing into hyperspace, leaving behind underwater cities and orbital habitats that would soon house human colonists. The transformation of humanity in those 5 years had been breathtaking in its speed and terrifying in its scope. What the Galactic Council had intended as punishment had become the catalyst for the most aggressive expansion in galactic history. Freed from the constraints of council law and driven by the fury of rejection, humanity had exploded across the galaxy like a star going supernova. The evacuation that should have broken humanity's spirit had instead revealed their true strength. In 30 days, human colonies across the galaxy had packed up not just their people, but entire industries. Fusion plants were dismantled and relocated. Research facilities were stripped down to their component atoms and reconstructed in free space. Even the massive agricultural domes of the farming worlds were disassembled and moved to new star systems beyond Council authority. Status report on the industrial complexes, Commander Zhang, Elena requested as she reviewed the tactical displays showing human expansion across this sector. All 7 asteroid mining facilities are operational, Captain. Production of military vessels is ahead of schedule. The shipyards at Kepler 442c just launched another dozen corvettes, and the heavy construction yards at Wolf 359 report the new battleship class will be ready for trials next month. Elena allowed herself a moment of pride. The Altair system would become another link in humanity's growing chain of fortress worlds. Each captured system was rapidly converted into a combination of military stronghold and industrial complex, feeding the war machine that had already consumed a dozen alien civilizations. The strategy was brutally simple and devastatingly effective. Humanity struck at lightly defended systems on the edges of Council space, offering the inhabitants a choice: evacuate peacefully and receive safe passage to Council territory, or resist and face the consequences. Most chose evacuation. Those few who chose resistance learned why the galaxy had feared humanity in the first place. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," announced Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Admiral Rebecca Santos, the architect of humanity's military expansion. Her steel-gray hair and battle-scarred face had become symbols of human determination across the galaxy. Behind her, Elena could see the sprawling orbital shipyards that surrounded Earth, where a new generation of warships was taking shape. "Captain Vasquez, excellent work securing the Altair system. Intelligence reports suggest the Council is finally beginning to panic. Their emergency session last week lasted 4 days, and our sources indicate significant disagreement about how to respond to our expansion." Elena leaned forward. "What's our next target, Admiral?" "The Vega Collective. 7 systems, rich in rare metals, and strategically positioned to control hyperspace routes into the Council's core territories. Intelligence suggests their fleet strength is minimal. Most of their ships were pulled back to defend the inner worlds after our success in the Tau Ceti sector." The tactical implications were clear. Vega represented the largest prize yet, but also the greatest risk. It was close enough to Council core worlds that its capture would force a direct military response. The carefully calculated expansion that had allowed humanity to avoid major fleet engagements would finally escalate into the full-scale war many had been expecting. "There's more," Admiral Santos continued. "We've received intelligence that the Council has been secretly negotiating with the Cronin Empire to establish a formal military alliance. If that treaty is signed, we'll face not just the Council fleets, but the most aggressive military power in this arm of the galaxy." Elena felt a cold smile cross her lips. The Cronin Empire was indeed the galaxy's premier military force, but their warriors had never faced an enemy like humanity. Where the Cronin fought for honor and glory, humans fought for survival and revenge. Where the Cronin followed ancient codes of warfare, humans adapted and innovated with every battle. "When do we begin the Vega operation, Admiral?" "Fleet deployment begins in 72 hours. Your battle group will form the spearhead. Captain, I want you to understand the significance of this operation. Success at Vega doesn't just give us 7 more systems, it proves that humanity can challenge the Council directly. Failure means our expansion stalls and we become easy targets for their eventual counterattack." The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts as the bridge crew continued their duties around her. 5 years ago, she had been a xenobiologist studying alien ecosystems on peaceful research stations. The banishment had transformed her into a military commander, leading one of the most effective fighting forces in human space. The transformation hadn't been limited to individuals. Entire human society had restructured itself around the demands of expansion and warfare. The old civilian governments still existed, but real authority rested with the military commands that coordinated humanity's conquest of the galaxy. Cities had become barracks. Universities had become research facilities dedicated to weapons development. Even children learned mathematics through ballistics calculations and studied history through military campaigns. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Rigel sector," Lieutenant Torres announced. "Admiral Park reports successful completion of the mining facility raids. 3 Council supply depots captured intact, including significant quantities of rare elements." These raids had become another hallmark of human strategy. Rather than simply capturing territory, human forces had begun conducting deep strikes into Council space itself, targeting industrial facilities, supply depots, and communication networks. The raids served multiple purposes. They gathered resources for humanity's war effort, they demonstrated humanity's ability to strike anywhere in the galaxy, and they forced the Council to divert military assets to defensive duties. "Any casualties?" Elena asked. "Minimal, Captain. The Council forces withdrew after token resistance. Intelligence suggests they've been ordered to avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary." That pattern had emerged across multiple operations. Despite their overwhelming numerical superiority, Council forces seemed reluctant to engage human fleets directly. Part of this was surely due to humanity's technological advantages. 5 years of unrestricted research and development had produced weapons and defensive systems that often surprised even their creators. But Elena suspected there was more to it than simple military calculations. The Council had spent millennia building their perfect, peaceful civilization. Their military forces were trained for ceremonial duties and minor police actions, not the brutal warfare that humanity had elevated to an art form. When faced with an enemy that fought without restraint or honor codes, many alien commanders simply didn't know how to respond. "Prepare the fleet for hyperspace transition to Vega," Elena ordered. "All ships are to maintain maximum readiness. If we're lucky, this will be another peaceful evacuation. If not—" She left the sentence unfinished, but every officer on the bridge understood the implications. As the massive dreadnought and its escort fleet prepared to jump to their next target, Elena reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed since humanity's banishment. The Council's perfect order was cracking under the pressure of human expansion. Refugee ships carrying displaced alien populations strained the resources of core worlds. Military budgets that hadn't seen significant increases in centuries were being revised monthly as the scope of the human threat became clear. Meanwhile, humanity grew stronger with each captured system. Every world brought new resources, new industrial capacity, and new strategic advantages. The asteroid belts were turned into shipyards. The gas giants became fuel depots. The habitable worlds hosted growing human populations that sent their children to serve in ever-expanding fleets. "Captain, hyperspace transition in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer. Elena gripped the command rail as she prepared for what would likely be the defining battle of her career. Vega would determine whether humanity's expansion continued or whether they had finally overreached their capabilities. But as she watched the stars begin to shift through the viewport, she felt only confidence. The galaxy had banished humanity for being too aggressive, too violent, too dangerous for civilized society. They were about to learn that their worst fears had been tragically inadequate. Humanity wasn't just aggressive, they were unstoppable. They weren't just violent, they were brilliant at violence. And they weren't dangerous to civilization. They were going to replace it entirely. "Transition complete. Welcome to the Vega system, Captain," reported the navigation officer. Before them spread 7 worlds that would soon learn what it meant to face humanity unleashed. And beyond Vega lay the Council's core territories, where the ultimate confrontation waited. Elena smiled as she gave the orders that would begin the next phase of humanity's conquest of the stars. The Council had wanted them gone. Instead, they were taking everything. The siege of Nexus Prime had lasted exactly 47 hours before the most powerful fortress in galactic history finally fell to human forces. Admiral Sarah Chen, now Supreme Commander of Human Space Forces, stood in what had been the Council's most secure command center, watching as her engineers systematically disabled the alien defense systems that had protected the galactic capital for over 10,000 years. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows, she could see human dropships landing across the city-sized space station. Marines in powered armor moved through corridors where the galaxy's most influential beings had once debated the fate of countless civilizations. Now those same corridors echoed with the footsteps of the species they had tried to banish from existence. "Status report on the council members," Sarah requested from her aide, Colonel Martinez. "All 5 primary council members are in custody, along with 43 representatives from major member species. High Arbiter Zexthul requested permission to perform a ritual suicide rather than face capture. Request denied. The Luminary Collective attempted to upload themselves into their quantum storage matrices before evacuation, but our cyber warfare teams intercepted the transfer." Sarah nodded grimly. After 8 years of warfare that had consumed half the galaxy, the final battle for the Council's seat of power had been almost anticlimactic. The once mighty alien fleets had been systematically destroyed or scattered across dozens of previous engagements. The industrial worlds that had supplied their war effort had fallen to human forces months earlier. By the time human fleets reached Nexus Prime itself, the station's defenders were already negotiating surrender terms. "And the terms of surrender?" Sarah asked. "Complete and unconditional. All remaining Council forces are to stand down immediately. All member species are to acknowledge human authority over former Council territories. The formal ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow in the main assembly hall." 8 years. That's how long it had taken humanity to go from exiled refugees to masters of the galaxy. The transformation had been so complete that even Sarah sometimes struggled to comprehend it. The species that had once begged for acceptance from alien civilizations now dictated terms to the same aliens who had cast them out. The path to victory had not been without cost. Nearly 3 billion humans had died in the wars of expansion, their lives spent purchasing worlds that would ensure humanity's dominance for millennia to come. Entire human generations had grown up knowing only warfare, their childhoods spent in the shipyards and military academies that fed humanity's ever-expanding war machine. But the cost to the galaxy's alien civilizations had been far higher. Hundreds of species had been displaced from their homeworlds. Ancient cultures that had existed since before Earth's sun formed had been scattered to the stellar winds. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for thousands of years had been shattered by humanity's relentless advance. "Admiral, we're ready for the prisoner interviews," announced Lieutenant Commander Patel from the doorway. Sarah made her way to the detention section, where the former rulers of the galaxy awaited their fate. The interview chambers had been hastily converted from diplomatic meeting rooms, their elegant alien furnishings replaced with stark human military functionality. Guard posts, scanning devices, and recording equipment filled spaces that had once hosted elaborate negotiations between star-spanning civilizations. High Arbiter Zexthul sat in the first chamber, his serpentine form coiled in what Sarah recognized as a posture of deep humiliation. His scales, once brilliant with the colors of authority, had faded to dull gray. The being who had pronounced humanity's banishment 8 years ago now faced judgment himself. "High Arbiter," Sarah began as she took the seat across from him. 8 years ago, you declared that humanity was too violent and aggressive for civilized society. You said we would corrupt the galaxy's peaceful order with our toxic ideologies. Do you still believe that assessment was correct? Zexthul's compound eyes focused on her with a mixture of defeat and grudging respect. When he spoke, his voice carried none of the authority that had once commanded the attention of the galaxy. "I believed your species was a threat to the stability we had maintained for millennia. I was not incorrect in that assessment." "No," Sarah agreed. "You were completely correct. We were everything you feared we would be. The question is, what did you think would happen when you cast out 12 billion humans and told them they were unwelcome in civilized space?" The former High Arbiter was silent for long moments, his alien features unreadable. Finally, he spoke with something approaching wisdom. "We believed isolation would contain your aggressive tendencies. We thought your species would turn inward, perhaps destroy itself in the wars we assumed would follow. We never imagined you would become more dangerous in exile than you had ever been under our restrictions. You tried to solve a problem by making it someone else's responsibility," Sarah observed. "Instead of working with us to channel humanity's nature constructively, you simply threw us away and hoped we would disappear. That was your civilization's greatest mistake." The interview continued for another hour, covering the strategic decisions that had led to the Council's downfall. Zexthol spoke candidly about the panic that had gripped the galactic government as reports of human expansion reached the core worlds. He described the desperate attempts to forge military alliances, the rushed mobilization of fleets that had no experience with actual warfare, and the growing realization that they faced an enemy unlike anything in galactic history. "Your forces adapted to every tactic we employed," he admitted. "Our commanders studied warfare as an academic exercise. Yours lived it as a fundamental reality. When our fleets met yours in battle, the outcome was inevitable." Sarah left the interview with a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. Victory had come at a tremendous price, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy as a whole. The peaceful civilization the Council had spent millennia building was gone forever, replaced by something harder, more dynamic, and infinitely more dangerous. The next morning brought the formal surrender ceremony in Nexus Prime's Grand Assembly Hall. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy attended, either in person or through quantum communication links. The hall itself was a marvel of alien architecture, crystalline walls that shifted color with the emotions of those within, gravity fields that allowed beings from different worlds to share the same space comfortably, and translation systems that could render thoughts directly between minds. Sarah stood at the podium where countless alien diplomats had once negotiated the fate of worlds. Behind her, the flags of human nations hung alongside the banners of the new colonial territories that had been carved from conquered alien space. Before her, the assembled representatives of galactic civilization waited to learn what human victory would mean for their species. 8 years ago, Sarah began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall, this council declared that humanity was unfit for membership in galactic society. You said we were too aggressive, too violent, too chaotic for your perfect order. You were absolutely right. A ripple of unease passed through the alien delegates. Many had hoped that human victory would be followed by magnanimous peace terms, perhaps even a return to the old system with humanity as the dominant member rather than an outcast. But your mistake was not in recognizing what we were. Your mistake was in believing that what you had built was better than what we could create. For 10,000 years, you maintained peace through stagnation. You achieved stability by suppressing change. You built a perfect order by excluding anything that might challenge it. Sarah paused, allowing the implications to sink in before continuing. Humanity will not make that mistake. We will not create a perfect system that cannot adapt. We will not achieve peace by banishing those who disturb us. And we will not maintain order by preventing growth. The terms Sarah outlined were far more generous than most of the alien species had dared to hope. Existing civilizations would maintain autonomy over their homeworlds and core territories. Cultural preservation would be protected and encouraged. Species that chose cooperation would be welcomed as partners rather than subjects, but the underlying message was unmistakable. The old galaxy was dead, and humanity would determine what rose in its place. The Galactic Council is dissolved, Sarah declared. In its place, we established the Terran Confederation, a union of worlds united not by enforced peace, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. Membership is voluntary, but the benefits of cooperation will far outweigh the costs of isolation. Some species, particularly the more militaristic ones, had already indicated their enthusiasm for the new order. Races that had chafed under the Council's pacifist restrictions saw opportunity in humanity's more dynamic approach to galactic governance. Others, especially the older civilizations that had helped build the original Council, struggled with the magnitude of change. As the ceremony concluded and delegates departed to carry word of the new order to their peoples, Sarah remained in the hall with her senior staff. The magnitude of what they had accomplished was almost overwhelming. Humanity had gone from galactic outcasts to galactic rulers in less than a decade. Admiral Rodriguez approached her, his expression thoughtful. The Andromedans have sent a formal communication. They're requesting negotiations for a mutual defense pact. Apparently, they've been monitoring our expansion and are interested in learning from our approach. Sarah smiled. The Andromeda Galaxy had always been considered beyond the reach of any civilization in the Milky Way. The fact that they were now reaching out to humanity spoke to how completely the balance of power had shifted. Schedule the negotiations, she decided, but make it clear that we expect equal partnerships, not the kind of patronizing relationship the Council offered us. As her staff dispersed to handle the countless details of ruling a galaxy, Sarah stood alone in the assembly hall where humanity's exile had been pronounced 8 years earlier. The irony was not lost on her. The Council had banished humanity to protect their civilization from human influence. Instead, they had created the conditions that allowed human influence to spread farther and faster than it ever could have under the old system. The galaxy would never again know the enforced peace of the Council era. But it would know something the Council's civilization had never achieved: the opportunity for genuine growth, real progress, and the kind of dynamic change that came from embracing challenge rather than avoiding it. Outside the windows of Nexus Prime, human ships moved through space lanes that had once been forbidden to them. Cargo vessels carried human goods to alien markets. Exploration ships departed for distant galaxies. Military patrols maintained order in systems that had known only chaos since the war began. Humanity had taken the stars by force, just as the galaxy had always feared they would. But in doing so, they had proven that force, properly applied, could build something greater than the peace it destroyed. The banishment was over. The real work of building humanity's galactic empire was just beginning.